Present levels of performance. Accurate representation of a student's present levels of performance, including academic and functional skills, requires each member of the case conference committee to come prepared with evidence to support what the student can do. Student input is a key component to the development of present levels of performance. Keep in mind that the data shared here is a starting point for continued progress monitoring.
As we begin our present levels of performance, you'll see that in front of us we each have a copy of the draft IEP that Mr. James has been able to provide for us. So if you'd like to follow along with us, we'd appreciate that. What Mr. James is going to be doing today also is documenting some of the decisions and discussions that we'll do today. So as we move into present levels, there's a section, as I look at mom and our student, there's a section of parent concerns that we want to make sure we place into our IEP, because as this conference unfolds, we want to make sure that we're addressing any and all of your concerns. So Mrs. Brown, when you think of Chris and his educational goals, what are your visions for him and what are your concerns?
Well, first I'd like to say I'm very happy with the progress that Chris has been making. I'm really pleased with that. I definitely have concern first and foremost with the English language art aspect of it. Is there some kind of test or something that he'll need to take at the end of that course that he's required to pass or something?
There is, and we'll be able to talk about that as we get deeper into his English class, and we'll talk about that end of course assessment.
Okay. I would really like to see, skill development and an increased use of technology for the organizational strategies. I really want to talk about college prep. Obviously, we've got a few years, but we need to kind of set that pathway for that. I would like to continue working towards more self-advocacy for Chris. That's something I think is very important, and especially as he's getting older. The social involvement in school and his community, it's better than it used to be, but I really would like us to continue to work on that and see what else we can do to make that happen a little more. If possible, I'd like an update at where he's at, just academically overall, credits and what he still needs to do. I think that was pretty much my main concerns I want to make sure we address today.
Thanks, Mrs. Brown. So Chris, we're going to ask you the same question. When you think of school, what would you like to share with us?
I want to get my driver's license. I want to take the classroom part of the course and then drive next summer. My favorite class is English because I like to write journals. I don't mind using my planner to organizing work for math, science, and social studies classes. English is harder, especially with projects that stretch out over 3 to 4 weeks. I think my strengths are being part of class discussions. I think I still need to work on staying focused all the time on the things I need to do.
Thanks very much, Chris. I think that's a very good assessment of yours, and we want to make sure that as we develop your IEP that we're addressing both of your concerns and fitting those into your goals. When we talk about present levels and we bring in the rest of our team members here, Mr. James is teacher of record. Would you please talk to us about his personal strengths and challenges? We'll be able to talk about his academics, like what his current grades are, and social, emotional skills, health, attendance, behavior, any of those.
Well, Chris is a very conscientious student. He's very aware of what things he needs to do to accomplish his goals, as well as what he knows his strengths, his weaknesses. And we're going to really look at focusing on helping him self-advocate even more. But also we want to make sure that he has a planner that helps him keep himself organized. But as a strength, he's very, very social. He's doing a good job of doing things outside of school that, would make him more engaged with other students. He's established friends, and that's a great thing to have happen when he's in high school. What I really want to look at is his grades, and his current grades are a B in math, a B- in social studies, a B+ in science. He's got a B+ in PE. An elective class, he has a C+, and then he has a C in English as well. And those are all decent grades, and we're going to continue to work at getting him a grade that's going to help him get ready for college, because that was one of his goals, I think, Chris, we talked about, right?
It sounds like you're doing pretty good, Chris. We'd like to also talk to your general education teacher. How about updating us with your English class?
Thank you, Mrs. Manning. I'm going to reiterate a lot of the things that Mr. James has already said. You know, Chris is a joy to have in class, and so coming up with strengths is not a difficult task. Every teacher loves to hear that their class is a student's favorite class, so when I heard him say that, that kind of put a smile on my face. Chris, you are a hard worker. You and I both know that. You work very hard, and you want to do very well, and you do very well.
Thanks.
You're social with your peers. You have many, many friends. You join groups. If we have class discussions, you're always an active part of the class discussions. And you know, those things, you just bring a lot to the class. You add so much to the class. Challenges, you've said a lot of them yourself already, that you rarely ask for help when you need it, that most of the time we come to you, and I've spoken with other teachers and they feel the same way that I do. You do answer questions when I ask questions of you. But as we look to your needs at this point and what we need from you, you love writing in your journal, and you're great at that. And it's, I think, why you like English. So if we could see you translate that into your more formal writing assignments, I think that's what we're working on, is to translate that passion you have for writing in journals and turn it into something really creative in formal writing. Your vocabulary is broadening, and we're going to continue to work on that. I mean, you're such a creative young man that writing could be just a great strength for you. We're working on your short answer paragraphs. That's something we've been working on together. And your longer essay writing is something else that we continue to work on. You currently have a C in English, and I know that's something that you'd probably like to bump up to a B if you could, or even an A. As far as the accommodations that we've used in class that seem to work well, I think, is that you work with me and your other teachers to determine how much additional time you might need, especially if that's in planning for a long-term assignment. You keep that planner nearby, which I think is just a great idea for every student. It's something that every student should do. You use that planner well, and I think it's been a really good support for you. You typically do request an additional half a day on those long assignments, and I think that's worked out really well.
Thank you very much for the information in your English class, and that's kind of a nice segue to the language difficulties that he's had. How about if we hear from our speech and language pathologist, who is also our teacher of service?
Well, Chris, I've really enjoyed working with you this year. As Mr. James and Mrs. Elwood have said, you're a very hard worker. You have some creativity in those journal entries that you've done, and I noticed that. Just to remind the team, we've learned through some previous testing that Chris's verbal skills are all within the average range, but he was having a little more difficulty getting things down on paper in a more formal way. Since then, our work together is focused on written language, and we had some real specific goals. One was to include more descriptive words in your written assignments, and the other was just to increase the length and the complexity of your sentences. Mrs. Elwood and I recently have reviewed some of your written work from English and from social studies, and we saw those assignments, and they were showing very good evidence that you have met those goals.
So you're not really working with him on speech?
No, we're not. We haven't been working on speech. As a result of that evaluation that we looked at last year, we found that his difficulties really lied in the language area, primarily that written language area. His articulation skills or his production of speech sounds is just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding present levels of performance, I think we've presented how he performs across his school day. Mrs. Brown, do you have any questions about how that looks or something we may have left out?
I can't think of anything.
Chris, how about you?
Do you have any questions about anything we've been talking about?
Okay.